Britain's political separation from India was supposed to take a year, but instead it was rushed through in around 6 weeks. Not much time to decide the fate of around 390 million people.
As yet, we cannot tell whether the result is to be triumph or tragedy.
Britain's Lord Louis Mountbatten, stationed in Delhi, set a deadline for midnight on August 15, 1947. The goal was to save the British Empire money after the crippling cost of World War II, as well as untangle itself from a colony that was now ravaged by infighting, mass unemployment and grain shortages. So a partition plan was drawn up by British lawyer Cyril Radcliffe, who knew little about India and was supplied with out-of-date maps and census information. But the August 15th deadline was met and the line was drawn. The country was divided into 2 states, India and Pakistan. The British wanted a quick exit, so the ruling Congress Party was given control of the Hindu majority areas of India, while the opposition Muslim League controlled their people in Pakistan. But it was an oversimplified view of a deeply complex country. That rapid Terran too also ripped apart families and communities, especially in the provinces of Bengal and Punjab, where Muslims, Hindus and Sikhs had farmed side by side for generations. More than 1 million people died in the fighting that followed, and the largest mass migration in history took place, as 10 million people tried to cross the new border, afraid of suddenly becoming a minority. By October, India and Pakistan were at war over the disputed Himalayan region of Kashmir. Then, in January 1948, Mahatma Gandhi, one of the key figures in gaining India's independence from Britain, was assassinated.
We should fight together against corruption, rather than fighting with each other. We should open more ways. More business should happen between 2 countries. Our students should go there and vice versa. I think that whatever tension is prevailing should end, and we should resolve our differences.
Britain's plan for a clean break had been shattered. In the past 70 years, India and Pakistan have fought 3 major wars over disputed Kashmir in 1948, 1965 and again in 1971, with this last battle ending with the creation of Bangladesh. The so-called line of control was also established around then and has been a pressure point since, with India accusing Pakistan of arming militants to help its cause. India also said Pakistan was behind the Mumbai attacks in 2008, which saw several key locations across the city targeted and more than 160 people killed. Repeated ceasefires over 7 decades have stalled, and despite agreeing to full disclosure on each other's nuclear weapon stockpiles, both India and Pakistan remain fully armed. And with attacks taking place along the line of control right up until a few days ago, it seems the cracks from that 1947 split are still there. Vanessa Keneally, The Newsmakers.
Now, he led Pakistan's army for more than 10 years before becoming the Minister of Defence and the nation's 10th leader. Joining me now from Dubai is former President of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. I know that you were born in Delhi during the time of the British Empire. You were just a child when partition happened, but there were so many appalling experiences on both sides. Do you think that's part of the problem today when we talk about India-Pakistan relations? There's just so much painful history there.
Yes, I think that past persists, unfortunately. It persists, unfortunately, because India has not genuinely reconciled to the creation of Pakistan. Therefore, this confrontationist stance, unfortunately, continues.
And yet there were high hopes when the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi invited his Pakistani counterpart to his swearing in. Many observers took that as a sign of a new chapter, but it didn't really happen. Why not, do you think?
No, because I think the one is to show, which is superficial. The other is genuine intent, sincerity to resolve disputes. That sincerity is not there at all in Prime Minister Modi's stance. What his utterances, the utterances, statements of his ministers, of his generals are certainly not conciliatory. They are confrontationist. They are not the same as in my time with Prime Minister Vajpayee and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, where both sides were sincere in their attempts to reconcile and to resolve disputes. That is not the case. So these artificial, superficial issues of invitations to birthdays and going to each other's swearing-in ceremonies, these are superficial elements.
So you're saying that there was no real intention on the part of Mr. Modi to try and normalise relations with Pakistan. Can the same be said of Pakistan? Is there any desire from Pakistan to normalise relations with India?
No. I mean, let me frankly and very honestly say that no, the intentions are different. Pakistan is a much smaller country. We want peace. We want peace through resolution of disputes. Now that is where the catch-22 situation is, that we want to resolve disputes with sovereign equality and our honor and dignity guarded. Because we are not a small country. We may be much smaller than India, but we are the 5th largest country of the world in population, and maybe our military is also the 5th largest or 6th largest military in the world. And we are a nuclear power. We can't be just brushed aside as a small country like Bhutan. So therefore, while India should realize that we are not a small country, and we will never buckle down to their subjugation as they want to do with Pakistan, we want honor and dignity restored. If they want to do that, Pakistan is certainly for peace.
Well, you mentioned disputes. One of the biggest disputes, of course, between India and Pakistan is the issue of Kashmir. Do you foresee a time when any progress can be made on that subject?
Progress can be made if both sides want. They say you can never clap with one hand. It needs two hands to clap. Both sides have to, first of all, have the sincerity to resolve the dispute. Secondly, they have to be flexible enough to listen to each other's points of views and accept others' point of views, if better. And thirdly, they have to have the courage to meet halfway in any dispute resolution. And when you meet halfway, you really are giving half and taking half. You cannot be taking all. Now that is where courage is required by the leaders. Now this is where people fail, leaders fail. They want to take all, and then they become rigid and inflexible. They don't want to give at all. So therefore, I think while dispute resolution is not easy, but if there is true amount of sincerity and flexibility, dispute resolution can be achieved. We had a 4-point formula in my time, and we were moving forward genuinely towards peace. We were drafting a peace agreement. So therefore, these things are possible when both sides want peace.
You say it's down to the leaders to show the path forward when it comes to trying to get peace between the two countries. But the problem in Pakistan, of course, is that leaders are very influenced by the army. You're an army man. You know this, of course, and the criticism is that the Pakistani army has no interest in better relations with India.
This is most unfortunate. Let me tell you, again, with all sincerity, now I really don't know how. I wish there was some system of proving or showing my sincerity when I'm saying that. Yes, indeed, I'm an army man, and I've commanded the army for so many years. I know the army inside out. I know their feelings inside out. They are for peace. As I said, we are a smaller country. We cannot have an aggressive stance. Our overall military strategy is of defensive deterrence. That is our strategy. That has been, the military has been tasked to ensure the integrity of the country through a mechanism of defensive deterrence, not offensive at all. So we want peace. So this element that you're talking of has been spread by India. And they have been spread by those who are against Pakistan, and they want to balkanize Pakistan, they want to weaken Pakistan, they want to weaken the army. That is not the case. We want peace. And army is all the way with the government if they want peace.
Okay, I mean, we know that relations between the two countries were never so low as immediately after the Mumbai attacks in India in 2008. The complaint from India that the Pakistani government backed the group which carried this out. And this is a constant criticism from India and from the US that Pakistan is unable to rein in terrorist groups.
Well, I mean, let us analyze these things and get to the core of the problem, and then understand why such things occur. Certainly, no sane person will support whatever happened in Bombay, but let's not stop there. Let's go back. The environment between India and Pakistan, you know, it's of tension, it's of confrontation. There is another issue, the environment within India of Muslim versus Hindu. This is a very serious issue, especially these days, where Muslims are being killed at random. Now, this creates antagonism between these two very big elements of Hindus are obviously in majority, but Muslims are about 20% of India. Now, this is what happened. Now, when you are talking of Bombay, you have forgotten what happened in Gujarat. Gujarat, 2,000 Muslims were butchered by the Hindus, while the same Prime Minister Modi was the chief minister, and he was abetting with the police. Now, we forget that because India is too strong, too big, and they ensure that the world, their diplomatic exterior maneuver is successful.
Nevertheless,
and the world forgets about whatever they do.
Isn't it contingent on the Pakistani government to rein in terror groups? You yourself were criticized by the US for not doing enough to control the jihadis. So this is clearly, you know, a source of dispute between not just Pakistan and India, but Pakistan and the West.
Well, I mean, your suggestion then is, whoever says that, I really take offense to it, because then, again, we have to do. Pakistan should rein in terrorists. They will keep killing 2,000 people in Gujarat. Next time they will kill in Delhi, and the third time they'll kill somewhere else. That will be ignored. But we have to rein in our terror. The problem is there is emotional attachment, there is emotionalism between the Muslims of Pakistan with the Muslims of India. Therefore, when 2,000 people get killed there, or when there is an issue like the Samjhota Express, which was where many Muslims were again butchered there through the attack, and an Indian serving major was involved in that. All these are ignored. So these, whatever happens in Bombay or elsewhere, is a reaction to these things. We want to ignore that. When you ignore that, you will never succeed. You will never succeed to bring peace between the two countries.
Let's talk about Pakistan today, because yet another political crisis in the country, Nawaz Sharif being forced to resign. Have you got any plans to go back to Pakistan and re-enter the political fray?
Well, let me say, yes, I have. And I have a vision for Pakistan because of the turmoil, the political turmoil that exists within Pakistan. Therefore, I believe the only solution to Pakistan's crisis, the political crisis, is to create a third political force. A third political force which is beyond ethnicity, and beyond sectarianism. Therefore, I think, which is not the case in any of the political parties at the moment. So therefore, I have a thought and I have a vision that the salvation of Pakistan and the security, the integrity of Pakistan lies in creating a third political force which has popularity in the whole of Pakistan, all the provinces of Pakistan, all the ethnic segments of Pakistan. And that is where I think maybe at this moment I have a role to play.
Do you think it'll be quite difficult for you to go back? Because you are facing a number of charges in the courts, including for treason and accusations over the assassination of Benazir Bhutto. Do you think you can return safely, given that?
No, I'll have to face them. But with the full knowledge that all these cases are politically inspired, especially by the Prime Minister who's left the scene now. We should also know that each one of these cases, each one of them, the ones that you've named, were initiated about 2 to 3 years after I left Pakistan, after I resigned. 2 to 3 years after I resigned. And only when I made my political party, this APML, after that, these cases were initiated. So you can understand the intentions of these cases. Now, if the initiator of that cases generally is out, well, we'll face these cases in the courts, and I hope justice will be done.
And quick final question, will the Pakistani people welcome you back? Do you think you have support in Pakistan? Because the last time you went back in 2013, it didn't seem as though you had a huge amount of support.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Although that was not a genuine view of my support, because in the last day, the venue was blocked by the police and our permission was withdrawn. We were supposed to have this the gathering somewhere else at the Quaid-e-Azam Mausoleum. And then a lot of things happened because of which the support was, and I agree with you that the public support was not there. But let me tell you, if you go to Pakistan and find out from the people of Pakistan, today they are harking back entirely to the days of my governance, and they all think that it was that time where they had, people were happy, there was welfare of people going on, and there was tremendous amount of socio-economic development going on in Pakistan. This is the general feeling everywhere. Now, one has to muster that through creating a platform. I don't have the platform at the moment. I am trying to create a platform.
Do you want to be Prime Minister?
Like-minded people. No. No, I don't want to. I think there has to be a more dynamic, younger person who should become a Prime Minister. I can be only in the advisory role, which I think I can help out.
And very quickly, because we are running out of time, are you able to tell us when you're going back to Pakistan?
Yeah, that's $1 million question.
It is, and I was hoping you would answer it on this show.
I always believe, and I've been telling these to the Americans also when they were talking of we are going to leave in 2014. I always used to say never make it time related, always make it effect related. You should talk of effects. What effects you want to create, leave when those effects are created.
Pervez Musharraf, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, let's get the perspective from India now on this 70th anniversary of partition. Joining me from New Delhi is Reza Laskar. He's an associate editor at the Hindustan Times. Reza, good to have you with us. I know that you have a unique perspective because you've worked in both Pakistan and India. We were talking to General Pervez Musharraf earlier. He was saying that there is no real appetite to try and get relations between India and Pakistan back on track right now. Would you say that that is a fair assessment?
You know, I don't usually agree with many of the things that General Pervez Musharraf says, but under the current circumstances, I think he's bang on target. I personally don't see any chance of relations between these two countries getting back on track or even some sort of informal or formal talks happening anytime in the near future.
And yet the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, right at the beginning of his prime ministership, was making overtures towards Pakistan, inviting his Pakistani counterpart over to his swearing-in ceremony. Was there optimism at that point, or was that a cosmetic exercise?
I think there was a lot of optimism even before that point in time. Let's not forget that Prime Minister Narendra Modi's election was preceded by the election of Nawaz Sharif by a huge majority. And he started off by talking about improving relations with India and about, having the civilians as the bosses over the military in Pakistan. So I don't think that was a cosmetic exercise, but circumstances was such that, this exercise really didn't go anywhere.
And of course, as we know, Kashmir, the single biggest dispute between India and Pakistan. Even now, there are accusations of breaching the ceasefire and violations on both sides. Musharraf says Pakistan is willing to negotiate on this, but India is not a negotiating partner. What is the situation with Kashmir? Is there any move towards having bilateral talks on that issue?
I think, the current government in India, headed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has taken a much harder position on Kashmir. I think, has made it very, very clear that it would prefer to handle Kashmir as a domestic issue and not have Pakistan have too much of a say in it. And that's been reflected in the way it's gone about handling the situation in Kashmir ever since there was widespread unrest there following the killing of a militant called Burhan Wani. And I think, there is very little possibility, as I said, of the two countries getting around to discuss something as tricky as Kashmir right now. They're not even talking to each other. There was an effort in December 2015 to get things moving, but since then, nothing has really worked out. So I don't think Kashmir is even on the table.
On the international scene, Afghanistan is becoming an issue between India and Pakistan. Both countries are trying to find leverage with Kabul. Is Afghanistan becoming a proxy battleground for the two countries?
Well, I think it's already become I wouldn't say it's a battleground, but it's become a staging area where both countries have been flexing their muscles for quite some time now. India has invested quite a bit of money in Afghanistan on development projects. It's put in a lot of resources. Apart from military assistance, it's given almost everything. But this current government has even, altered the rules over there. There's been some limited amount of military hardware being supplied to Afghanistan. There is a lot of shadow boxing that goes on between the two countries in Afghanistan. And the sad part is that, Afghanistan really needs to be a part of the agenda for any sort of talks between India and Pakistan. But that has never been the case in recent years.
Yeah, how important is a stable Afghanistan for India's interests, and how much of that is threatened by the perceived support for the Taliban coming from Pakistan?
Well, I think if you really speak to people in India's foreign ministry, they would probably, almost everyone would tell you that Pakistan is one of the biggest reasons for what they see as the instability in Afghanistan. While that may not be a totally accurate reflection. Afghanistan has its own problems. The government it has is pretty weak. But an unstable Afghanistan, I think everybody in Delhi agrees is not good, not just for India, but for the entire region.
Yeah,
it's something that nobody...
I was going to say that there's a huge amount of concern about the insurgency, the growing insurgency in Afghanistan. This war has been going on for so long. US particularly concerned about the Taliban. US lawmakers have said that they'd like to increase India's support for the Afghan security forces. Is that something that India is going to do, even though that's going to be yet another irritant for Pakistan?
India has historically had only one instance of sending its troops into a foreign country, and that was in Sri Lanka. And that was an unmitigated disaster. Ever since then, governments have been very, very reluctant to send Indian troops to foreign soil, unless it's under the UN flag. And India has rebuffed numerous overtures from the US and from Western powers to send its troops to Afghanistan. It's highly unlikely. I mean, I don't see that happening. I don't see Indian boots on Afghan soil anytime in the near future. Though there could be an uptick in the supply of military equipment. India has given Afghanistan some attack helicopters. Afghanistan has a wish list for armored vehicles, for artillery from India. Possibly there could be a greater, there would be some enthusiasm in Delhi to possibly provide more military equipment to Afghanistan.
Talk to me about public opinion in India. The Pakistan High Commissioner said recently that, the enmity between Pakistan and India has gone on long enough. This has been 70 wasted years. It's time for a new beginning. As far as public opinion goes, is there any enthusiasm for trying to push for a new chapter with India, with Pakistan?
One of the best things that about the current generation of Indians, I mean, possibly the last two generations after me, is that they don't remember partition too much. They're not really affected by the incidents of 1947. These are a bunch of young people who want to get on with their lives, who want, a developed India. And they could have been potentially a huge bank of goodwill for better relations. But then there was the Mumbai attacks in 2008. And I think people in Pakistan, having lived in Pakistan at the time of the Mumbai attacks and, having seen the sort of reaction that was there within India, I think a lot of Pakistanis still don't realize how much the Mumbai attacks affected the Indian people.
Yeah, that still really left a scar in India, hasn't it? And the perceived lack of justice that they got from, those behind the attack.
Yeah, I mean, the Pakistani authorities arrested 7 people for the Mumbai attacks, but a lot of Indian policymakers, a lot of Indian security officials think that out of those 7, possibly only 2 of them really matter. And, the real people who are involved in the Mumbai attacks are still at large. And till there's some sort of closure on this, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to change Indian public opinion. And, a person like Narendra Modi is going to face a lot of difficulty. I mean, particularly the core constituency that he has in domestic politics is certainly not going to, accept any sort of soft position on Pakistan.
Yeah, and both countries have elections within the next 2 years, don't they? So how much are relations between India and Pakistan a campaign issue?
Well, strangely, I was pretty surprised that India was not a huge issue in the last elections in Pakistan. It hardly ever came up. I mean, one only heard about Pakistani politicians talking about their belief in having better relations with India. But that is not the case in India. In Indian elections, Pakistan has become a huge issue, and especially after the recent attacks that have happened, in 2016. And I think they are going to be a huge, huge issue now in both the elections that are coming up. I think Kashmir is going to be an issue in the Pakistani elections next year, and I think Pakistan is definitely going to remain an issue in the elections that are held in, the state elections and the general elections in India.
Reza, good to speak with you. Thank you very much indeed for that. Reza Laskar there.